If this new project goes to plan, we will have saved an infamous and some say classic hot hatch from the scrapyard. Not only that, we may even improve it in the process. I bought this car over a year ago and it's just been sitting neglected ever since. Its previous owner was a friend from work, and when he told me he was going to send it to its early grave, I knew I had to save it. Now there is a good reason for the direction it was headed. Yes, there are some issues with this car, but hey, that's why we have it. It's a 2006 Mark V Golf GTI. Being a Mark V, it has the 2-litre TFSI engine, not the BAM engine that was a proven 1.8-litre engine in the previous generation, the Mark IV Golf, and also in some of the Audi TT models. This was one of the first Volkswagen models to use a DSG gearbox. Thankfully, we have the no-messing manual transmission in this one. Another fact about this car and this particular engine, this is the first direct injection engine to be fitted to a Golf. And it also has a dual-stage intake manifold to help with low-down torque. So this is a pretty sweet engine package. This car from new cost 22 grand. We have the stock Monza 18-inch alloy wheels that came factory on the car. It's on a PQ35 chassis platform, which is shared with other models of this era, like the Seat Leon, for example. Anyhow, I've rinsed Wikipedia enough with facts for you. This is our new mini project. Until we know the extent of any damage or the degree of repair, this will either be put back on the road as a standard-ish car, or we may go full track spec for this build. We will take it step by step and see where it leads. Firstly, I want to take a good look at the rust in front of this wheel arch and on the sill. You can see how far the rust has come up the rear quarter panel. Before that though, I'll jack the car up, get the wheels off and these plastic trims, which will get me more access. First need to find the locking wheel nuts. Dear God, this car has been sat for a long time. It's like a derelict boot area. I presume that's for the rear light. Some nice floor mats. Go find Jack. Oh boy, I have found the filler. Look at all of that filler. Oops. Yep, there's a reason why this was going for the scrapyard. Here's a finger for reference to how thick the filler is. We'll see how far this goes up the rear quarter. What the heck? Please be a bag full of money. What the? Well, there's a solid part of the car. Yeah, it's a little worse than I thought. The reason why this was an MOT failure is because the rust area was within 12 inches of the trailing arm, i.e. a structural mounting point. The chassis seemed okay apart from the very end. Once I know how far to go back this way, I can start cleaning it up and cutting all of the rust out. I now have have some mild steel to repair the sill. This should be plenty in case there are any more areas on the car that need attention. First, I need to get rid of all of the rust before I start bending the metal and get the welder going. I am happy now I've cut the worst of the rust off. Anything else you see is just surface rust, and I will take that off before I prime it. Next, I'm going to measure up the size of plate I need. Very scientific. Looks good. I now need to make the first bend in the sill, which is this bend right here. For this one, we want to aim just shy of 90 degrees. Think just a bit more. See how we go with that? I now need to put a slight kink where it bends around to come up the side of the sill. Inside the sill, then once it's fully welded, I can bend it up and trim it down to size. It's not the prettiest in the world, but it should last a while. Before I form this piece to the car, I will spray the welds with some etch primer. I am going to mark the plates now. For the material, I need to trim. I did keep this piece that I removed, so I can use it as a template. Take a bit more off of this edge. The rest is good. Now I need to work my way all the way around this plate. I've tacked it on in certain areas. I've used a jack and a block to hold it in place that end. Slowly coming back to life. Quite a lot of smoke inside the car, so I'm going to have to take this door trim off rather quickly. I think we're good. I have just gone around the edges and taken off all the high bits. Now I need to make the end plate, so I've got my CAD machine out. I now have this piece welded on and on the underside. Won't take the camera too close because it's terrible. I'll give it a rub down before I put some etch primer on. I am done with this sill for the moment. The next stage on this is filler and underseal, but for now I am going to move around to the other sill because I believe there is some more rust, but hopefully it's not as bad as the near side. see down in the corner, it's not gone half as bad as the other side. I'll get the angle grinder to it now. I've just taken the sound deadening out so I don't set fire to the car again. As you can see this side, it is a smaller area. However, there are some more issues. There is a small hole here, and there is a section further up I've cut out midway along the sill, which is a bit odd, but that does need addressing. I've checked all the way up the sills, both sides now, so I'm pretty sure once I take care of these areas, I'm hoping that's most of the rust dealt with. It's the following morning. I've jumped forward just a touch. I've made up some plates for this sill. They should be prepped for welding. I have just about got the sill back together. It has taken a while to weld this all up. Now I'm going to clean it up, take all the rough edges off, and then primer before the underseal. Moving back to the passenger side, I'm going to start putting some filler on this area here to build the level back up to match the quarter panel. I have no idea why the filler is so thick here, but we'll just ignore that. Having welded up both sides, I believe the reason why they were rusted is that there was loads of mud and debris stuck inside the arch liner and trapped all down here. So over time, the amount of moisture kept inside, it will have stayed wet for a long time. That's probably why these have rotted out. As you can see on the driver's side, I've also put some filler on a few patches. I've taken some of the bubbles out of the paint on the arch. We'll get some etch primer on the sill, and I think we will call it for the day. Over the past few days, I have been prepping this area with some filler, building up some layers. I aim to get it as closely matched to the other side as possible. As this car has been sat for so long, there are a few mechanical things we need to look at. The handbrake, for example, is currently doing nothing, so I need to look at where it's seized. If we take a look where the cable meets the caliper, we can see that this side is released. On this side, however, you can see it's still locked. I'm guessing this cable is seized. Very seized. Okay. To get this cable off, I now need to take the centre console out. Oh, dear Lord. That is grim. Look at that. That's mould. Got some ketchup there, but that's off. Lovely. Have a look. Ew. It's just sugar, so it's probably alright. What else we got? Tangy tomato dip with some added mould. A nice assortment of pens. Ah, gross. That is awful. Well, hopefully I can get some bolts. That's for the battery mount, I believe. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's start with them. There we go. We have to take this carpet up now. There it is. Removing the cable was tricky as it's tucked so tight under the carpet, which is all in one piece, so it's hard to pull it up off the floor. In a minute you'll see there's a rigid aluminium sleeve, which also has to be bent slightly to be prized out, but with a bit of perseverance and huffing and puffing, I managed to get it out. I've got the new cable. This end is looking good. On the original it has this metal piece that runs under the floor in front of the back seats. I'm hoping I can transfer this to the new one. In actual fact, I'm not going to bother, as the new one is in a sheath anyway. This will turn out to be a waste of time, as I'll have to take it back off the car. I will explain shortly, but most of the time making assumptions normally costs you in time. I have taken the cable back off because you do need this piece. In fact, you need this piece to hold it in place in the cab. I'll move on to another job for now, and in the meantime I'll try and find the right part. To be honest, the passenger side isn't much better. It is moving, not far away from being seized, so I'll probably order two. So that's the other cable out. Back to the cables. Those of you out there that are Volkswagen and Audi specialists are probably shouting at the screen saying these actually come in multiple parts. You have the cable holder or cable tube, which is this aluminium piece. The cable I installed yesterday goes into it. But what fooled me is the fact that these are attached, so I'll have to cut these off. Then I need to make sure the cable that I have already fits. Then I just need to order another one the same. Hopefully I can repair this piece. It split when I got a bit heavy-handed taking it out. Making good use of the 3M tape, I repair the tube. Now I'm trying to take it apart gently with as much care as possible, but in the end I needed to get the grinder. I ended up having to drill the cable out of this tube. Whether it's down to the fact it was seized or the original cables aren't supposed to split, I'm not sure. This should just slide straight on now. I'm presuming this piece should butt up to that point there on the new cable. Now it's just a case of sliding the aluminium sleeve onto the new cable without damaging the plastic that protects the cable. Before I get the parts back in the car, I need to put the rubber grommet back on so I can seal it into the chassis. Taking care not to bend the new cable harshly, I start installing the passenger side, also taking care not to do damage to the repair I did. Seems to have done the trick. We have some tension on the cable, slotted back in well. Now we need to get the rubber seal back into the chassis, which should be quite tricky. Now I'm moving on to the rear brakes. I'm taking the calipers off and checking the pads. I have reason to believe there is a wheel bearing gone on the car, but I'm not sure which corner it is yet. So now is a good time to check that while I'm doing the brakes. To be honest, for the amount of time the car has been sat still, the brakes are really not in that bad a condition. There's some light surface rust, but from what I can tell, nothing's really seized, so good clean up and we should be good to go. With the caliper and pads completely removed, the disc is now free to check for play. Rotating the disc and firmly pulling back and forth from the edges is a pretty simple way to check for play. This one seems good. Putting the brake caliper and pads back on now, I'm just thinking I'll probably leave the rear pads as stock. I may look at upgrading the front brake pads though. After all, this is a heavy machine. Doing exactly the same to the driver's side. I have noticed generally the driver's side is slightly more rusty and looking worse for wear compared to the passenger side. Not entirely sure why that is. Normally it's the other way around in the UK as we drive on the left hand side of the road. But anyway, everything looks good, nothing's seized, and the wheel bearing hasn't gone on this one either. I have noticed some more rust on the top of the wheel arch on the driver's side. Now I'm going to remove the arch liner. Unfortunately, all the tiny screws are rusty and seized, so it's a combination of techniques to get these out. Using the drill is quite a good option. However, the hardened steel screws soon destroy the drill bits. Another technique is to use a hammer and screwdriver to chisel them loose, and then use a pair of pliers to slowly undo them. And finally, the arch liner is free. This car has been like a treasure hunt. I slowly find parts of the car in weird and often disgusting places. If neither of the before methods work, you can always rely on the angle grinder. Both lower left and right front arch liners are still attached to the under tray, so this means I can remove it nicely in one piece. Now I'm taking the front calipers apart. These were really seized and hard to get loose. The front wheel bearing checks are a bit harder as the drive shafts are bolted inside the hub. This one does have a bit of play, but I will compare it to the other side once I have that off. Next, I'm going to take the anti-roll bar link off. I want to get these uprights out because the passenger side spring is snapped. I'm going to replace both springs, that's why I'm taking this side off. I am hoping this end will come off because the top's gone really tight. Come on, let's round off. It's rounded off. Oh, it's so close. Right, new set of drop links, I think. Oh great, yeah, that's what you get for using the wrong tools. This spark plug socket is now ruined. Shocking. What makes it worse is I actually have a proper socket. Or I realised I had a proper socket that fits, 21mm.
back rod ends. I'm just hoping I can get them off without having to replace them. Success! Look at all the thread lock. Thanks to the tapered fit, it's well locked in there. 2 for 2. I've got my universal bonnet stay. The top mount bolts should be under this scuttle panel. Here we go. That's going to be fun. That is rusty. I have just gone around the top mounts and put a bit of spray around the nut on the top. I'll let that soak in. I have also covered the area where the strut goes into the hub. I will let all that soak overnight. Then we can see about getting the uprights off the car. I have the socket for the hub nut. Let's see how tight these are. Not too bad. I've just gone and popped the drive shafts out. This one's pretty good. There's no play, no noise. However, on the driver's side, same thing. Not good. Slight play. So this is the culprit, and I'll need to replace the wheel bearing. Next, I'm going to do something I strongly advise you never do. As I don't have any spring compressors here, I'm just going to cut the spring in the middle. This should release the pressure to allow me to get the upright out. Then, when I go to put them back on with spring compressors, slot it into the hub. Doing it this way means I don't have to take the bottom end apart and undo all the plumbing. I've never tried this before, so you'll be here to witness what happens. I've got my eye protection on though. Oh, I thought that was it then. Got a bit more to go. Should probably keep my hands out of there. There we go. Alright. Less dramatic than anticipated. I have been undoing the bolts for the top mount. Unfortunately, this one's rounding out. You can see how rusty it is. So, I need to get all this trim out of the way so I can cut the head of the bolt off. I guess that part would be called a gutter. There's the progress. It's taking a while. Finally, that took some doing. I am installing the remaining handbrake cable on the driver's side. This time I'm going for the method of inserting the aluminium tube first, then threading the cable up through it. Still, this job was tricky to get access underneath the carpet, and installing the rubber weather seal into the chassis was as hard as the other side. With the tube installed, it's just a case of pushing the cable up through into the cab. The driver's side handbrake cable is now attached. That'll do. Now both handbrake cables are installed and it's adjusted, I can tuck the carpet up back underneath the rear seat, making sure both cables are flush against the tunnel so they don't get knocked or damaged by legs or feet. Moving back to the front of the car, I cannot free the upright from the hub. I have decided to take the upright and hub off as one. To achieve this, the things left to do are to remove the 3 nuts from the lower arm, then carefully moving the caliper, hoses and sensor wires to one side, which will allow me room to take the upright out. Queen of the Lord, haters gonna hate, won't be sorry now. One out. There is no adjustment on the lower arm, as previously suspected, so that's good news. I can bolt it straight back on and it should be aligned. I carried out exactly the same procedure on the driver's side. As the wheel bearing is gone on this side, I'm going to start stripping down the hub. The odds of this rounding off. Once I take care of the brake disc securing screw. Yep, that has snapped the bits. Carefully, of course. I rotate the disc and hit it with a medium-sized hammer to free it from the hub.
Looks like... Oops. Still good. Looks like the right fit to me.
The 4 bolts that hold the wheel bearing to the hub are really corroded, so I am hitting them with some spray, which should give me more of a fighting chance.
Let that soak overnight. I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the driver's side. However, this spring is still intact, so there could be more of a bang.
With this spring butchered too, I have no need to use spring compressors.
Once again, slightly disappointed.
So I can remove the top mount.
Smooth. Top mount's good. I've got 2 springs now.
Before I get the new spring in place, I will clean the areas I won't be able to get access to, like the seat mount. With the upright on the bench, I am cutting the stabilizer link off, as if you remember, I had to cut the other side off, so I will be replacing it with a brand new one. A bit more of a clean, and I can refit the bolt that clamps it upright to the hub, as now they are not going to come apart. Swapping the struts over, I can now do the same to the other side. If I can sort the rounded bolt out, I will reuse this top mount. Having run all of my cutting discs low, it took a bit more time to get this side's stabilizer link off, but with a bit of perseverance, the grinding disc, we got the job done. Just a little tidy up, and after it's rusted back up, no one will know. We have both uprights ready for the springs. I just need to go pick them up. Next, I'll take a look at this bubbling on the wheel arch. I am taking the paint right back and seeing just how far this rust has gone in. Normally, bubbling paint isn't as bad as it really looks. The air bubbles make it look catastrophic, but once I've taken the worst off, other than some minor pitting, it will be okay. And by no means, it's rusted through. It's still intact, you can see that's the worst area. I will get some etch primer on, then fill it back to the level of the paint. While I'm in the zone, I am doing a bit of rehab on the chassis leg. Again, this is just surface rust, which I'm taking off with the disc, and I'll put some primer on it, just like on the wheel arch. I will spray those areas as the last job today, so I don't get choked out by the paint. Back to the top mounts, and I am fully removing that rounded bolt that I struggled with in episode 2. I could buy a new top mount, but I don't really want to wait to get one, and it doesn't really need to be replaced, as I have a plan to make it as strong as it was before. What a swine. To remedy this, I'm simply going to use a new bolt. You can see that there are threads in the top mounting plate. For additional support, I will put a new nut on as well once it goes back on the car. Continuing with the theme of damage, I have the driver's side mirror, which is a little worse for wear. So let's get this replaced. I am hoping this is going to be a simple job. The first thing I need to do is pull the plastic backing off of the lens itself.
Oh dear. That's my light gone.
As it's the factory glass, there are 3 layers. There is the glass, there is the heater element, and then there's the plastic backing plate which clips into the wing mirror. I have to be careful removing the black plastic piece.
Can you tell yet that I'm not going to use the heated element?
If I break it, I have to get it from Volkswagen, which may take some time, so I'm very carefully prying it from the back. With the pieces separated, all I have to do is remove the film from the lens, then stick the backing plate in the right place. Carefully popping the mirror back into the housing. I double checked all the electrics worked afterwards as far as adjustment goes. All is working as it should. I'm not sure how many years bad luck that is. Slowly but surely, we're ticking the jobs off. The passenger side tail light is not working. It's probably got something to do with the fact that this is all apart, so we'll try and get that working next. Can you see the pin on the left? It's super rusty, so I'm presuming that's the problem. Bad earth, maybe? Let's take a look at the plug. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, that's probably the problem. See the connection on the right? Bad news. I might try leaving this in baking soda and water. See how well that method works. Baking soda and water.
See how that goes. Perfect.
Moving to the front of the car, it's time to remove the front bumper. Again, like most things on this car, the small Torx fittings that hold the trim on are prone to snapping, so I had to be really careful as I went along. Not only that, the plastic trims are old. With everything being brittle, I had to take care not to snap anything. The worst screws to remove were the ones that hold the edges of the bumper, but I was lucky this time and I managed to remove both of them. There are more screws that run under the front of the car. I was obviously on a roll because all of these came out too. Pulling the bumper around a bit, clearly it was still attached somewhere. There are always some that get left behind. Eventually I found the last two behind the grille. At last, the bumper's off. All that's left is to unplug the fog lights. Unfortunately, this is just a start. I now have to disassemble the front bumper, and I'll explain why in a minute. Slowly but surely, I start releasing the plastic clips from the backside of the bumper. One or two of them snapped, but that's not the end of the world. The screws that held the number plate on were completely gone, so in the end I had to cut them off with the angle grinder. Progress is now being made. That's the front grille off.
Almost zero damage, not too bad. There we go, that's the bumper disassembled. I will try to replace the wheel bearing. I have the right socket for these triple square heads. Place your bets now, how many of the four round out? Come on now. Two. Too good to be true so far. Gonna be three. I think we're home free now. That's good news.
The last two bolts were extra stubborn, so I needed to deploy the bar. Next, I need to punch the centre of the wheel bearing. There is no special technique to this, you just have to go to town.
Hopefully the new one goes in much better.
Before I put the new bearing in, I need to give the housing a really good clean. I cannot use the same method that I did when I removed the old bearing. I need to make sure it sits inside without getting the hammer out. A combination of wire brush, emery cloth and nylon wheel. It's cleaned up well.
I think we're just about ready for the new bearing. Perfect. We also have new bolts. I'm just checking the torque spec for these bolts. It just says FT. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's see what we're working with here. Old spring, new springs. Ones that were on the car were eye-back, so we're probably downgrading to be quite honest. Slight difference in the thickness. All these cheap ones have got thinner paint on. They look about right though. Looks good. Before I put this top mount on, I will just lubricate the internal slightly with some grease, just to give it a new lease of life.
As these are 25mm lowering springs, luckily there is no need to use spring compressors. I could apply enough force just to get the nut started. then I could buzz them on. I am guessing the eye back springs that I removed were lowering springs also, so I am banking on the fact that the new front springs roughly match the rears. Next, I am installing the new stabilizer link. It's just a bit easier than doing it when it's on the car. This side, the driver's side, is now ready to go back on the car. I won't put the disc on now, just so it's a bit lighter to maneuver. I don't want any more mishaps with the top mount bolts. I'm just giving them a quick clean up. I'm using a jack to aid me to get it up into place. It's a bit tricky doing this on my own. To hold it up into place, align it, and screw in the top mount bolts, using my old pal Jack as a helper seems to work. Before threading the drive shaft back through the hub, I will clean then lubricate the splines to make assembly and disassembly easier. Once it's in, I can pop the lower arm back on, then wind the hub nut in. After lubricating that also. On goes the stabilizer link to the anti-roll bar. Disc back on with a new securing screw. Spigot ring and wheel nuts. Then tighten up the securing screw. Like new. I'm going to hold off putting the caliper back on until I've decided if I'm going to get some uprated pads or not. So the last thing to do for now on this corner is do this hub bolt up. 185 foot-pounds and then 180 degrees. I lied, it's 148 foot-pounds, which is 200 Newton meters, and then 180 degrees. I don't think this has been wound so tight in its life. As I'm reusing the drive shaft bolts, the additional 180 degrees is probably not a good idea, as they are most likely to be stretch bolts. So I'm going to 200 Newton meters with a torque wrench, then maybe a quarter of a turn with the bar, and to be honest, that's about all I can muster.
I'd say that's tight enough.
Moving on, I do exactly the same to the other side. Greasing the top mount. Installing the spring. Clamping on the top mount. This time I didn't use my friend Jack, I just persevered. Drive shaft on. Lower arm on. Hub nut on. Drop link to anti-roll bar. This time I installed it after, so I had to do the top up as well. .200 Newton meters. Oops. Then it kind of went downhill. Oh no. Bent it. Yeah, I'd say that's tight enough. One more thing, track rod ends need to go on. That's a whole lot of grief right there. The paintwork is awful, and with the repairs, especially to this quarter, I currently have a mismatch of colours. So to wrap this car halfway decent, I have taken the front bumper off, taking out all the trim. The last bit is this number plate housing and the grille. I will try and get those apart next. In fact, you could tell what was coming. What I didn't realise is this is all one piece. It's just a red trim that will come out. I will keep it in case I decide just to have it broken, I guess. That's it then. The entire front bumper is ready for cleaning, prepping for the wrap. In order to make my life easier, I need to get rid of these crash bars. Again, I can keep these in case I want to put them back on. Pretty well, they are. Gee. The door's about the only good panel on the car. It's going to be a shame if I destroy it now. Yeah, I think this is going to go back on as there are holes all the way along the door.
paint off.
Choppers are coming. I am just in the middle of cleaning up this contact for the rear lights. Using some sandpaper and spray, I'm just going to clean up the surface.
Come on. Nothing. That's a shame.
Still no joy with this light. I have checked the fuse. All good. I am presuming that the corrosion inside the connection on the harness side is too far gone, so I'll probably need a new connector. I'll move on to another job for now. I need to get all this glue off the side of the car, both sides, try and find something to remedy that. This nylon brush seems to be doing a good job, and it's not taking too much of the paint off, if any, so I'm pretty happy with this.
A tedious job, but it will be worth it.
It's a bit of a nose. I've done the driver's side as well now, so that's a job well done. On the theme of wrapping the car, I need to take the door handles off. Again, this is going to be a thankless task, but necessary. That's not what I expected. I have just done some research, which I probably should have done before I took the door card off. Access it through the side so I can put all this back on and then carry on. I have butchered the door card back on. Quite honestly, it doesn't fit as well as it did when it came off. There are some plastic clips behind which are impossible to get aligned. Anyway, I need to take this trim off. Come on, pal. Are you kidding? There's a tiny Torx fitting inside that hole. Okay, that's progress. Alright, easy enough once you know what you're doing. I'll do the same on the other side. I finally got the driver's side off, along with the key barrel. This piece was rattling around inside the door. We could have some issues when it comes to putting this back on, but for now, at least we can get the car wrapped. It's pretty good. I just need to fill some of the scratches and then that'll be good enough to wrap. Seems to have started working again. I've just ran it up to put some heat through the engine. It's working now since I cleaned those rusty contacts. If I wiggle the wires, so it must. There we go. Fingers crossed, eh? The reason for removing the trim on the inside of the tailgate is I was hoping there would be bolts holding the spoiler on. In actual fact, I think it's bonded. I did want to remove this to make it easier to wrap, but I've come up with a plan B. Instead of wrapping the underside, I'll just do the top. Because it's black, I think it will tie in well with the window anyway, so it shouldn't look too out of place if just the top area is wrapped.
Yeah.
There is some damage to the rear bumper. Also higher up on the rear quarter panel. If I had to guess, this quarter of the car has had an impact at some point. Sugar. Ah, damn it. Oops. Had a little spillage on the engine there. Oh dear. I'll save what I can. The last thing you saw was me putting some matte black spray on both of the grills. That's going on the front bumper. These were both UV damaged. With some fresh paint, it's really brought them back to life. I have reinstalled the trim on the B pillars, albeit not very well, as I have probably broken some of the clips that hold them to the car. And whilst I was doing these jobs, the wrap has arrived, so I need to focus on getting the whole car clean, so I can start with that. First, I'm curious to see what the colour's like, as I ordered it without a sample. It's heavy. It's orange. It's supposed to be fire orange. Let's take a corner off. It's quite nice. You can see it's got like a protective film on it. So once you take that off, it's super glossy. It's really hard to portray on camera what colour it actually is. When it comes to applying the wrap, I'm going to start off small. I may need an extra pair of hands, certainly to do the roof, possibly the bonnet as well. I will get some practice in on the smaller panels. I think I should start really small. First piece done.
Using a sharp knife, I get to work on the smaller pieces, starting with the door protectors. I use some heat to do the domed end and the tricky bits. In order to be most economical with the vinyl, I cut thin strips to size, straight from the roll as I go along. Now the smallest bits are done, I move on to the centre of the front bumper.
This area I don't have to be too careful because the number plate will go over it.
To relieve stress on the vinyl, I cut the top section out, then use some heat to deboss around the edge. Once I am happy the vinyl has stretched enough, I cut the excess material off. I do not have to be really neat here, because the red plastic trim will finish it off nicely. Now I can trim around the outside of the grille. On goes the plastic trim, then the badge. I'm still yet to install the GTI logo. Now the panels get progressively larger. I'm starting on the front left wing. For this panel, I'm not using any water, so it's a dry application, slowly working down from the top right corner. Overall, this panel is going okay. Once the vinyl's on, I trim around the wheel arch and up the door line. Trim around the headlights. Onto the passenger door. This is a relatively flat panel, so there shouldn't be too much to go wrong. The hardest part about this is only having two hands. Trying to hold the vinyl away from the car in certain areas while I apply takes a lot of attention and concentration. I ended up taking the door panel back off as it was starting to crease right in the centre. I think on the next attempt I'm going to wet lay it, and it will give me a chance to move it around a bit and perhaps start from the centre and work my way out. Now the second attempt is going much better. I can trim along the door line, front and back, across the sill, applying some heat to deboss it where the door handle goes, trim along the top of the door line, and we can move on. Onto the bonnet. Using water on this section is key. It's easy to pull up and reapply the vinyl to stretch it out over the surface. I start by working from the centre. This is my second attempt at the bonnet. You can see at the front centre I have some serious problems.
With the minimal skills I have, I don't think I can get around this problem. I'll most likely have to make some cuts. Then I'll disguise this area with something else, maybe a decal of some sort.
The issue I came across here was I had to get rid of excess material. As the bonnet curves down to the front of the car, there is nowhere for the material to go.
I don't know really what to do. No matter what I do here, it's going to look unprofessional, shall we say. Oh, look at that. I think I've got an idea for this.
Already this job is testing my patience. Staying positive though, I move on to trimming the excess from the bonnet, making sure to keep my knife nice and sharp to get a nice smooth line. Moving on to the biggest section, the roof. I had to work out a bit of the technique to apply the vinyl initially single-handedly. By adding water you can have the issue of getting the backing paper wet. This will fall apart and stick to the vinyl, basically writing it off, so I had to take real care not to do that. Using the same technique as the bonnet, I carefully work my way from the centre, running lines back and forth, slowly squeezing the water out. In order to relieve stress on the edges, I carry out a rough trim down. As I get to the corners, the tension rises, and it takes more and more work to get the vinyl down. Now I can carefully trim across the front, along the back, right the way along the sides, both left and right. Starting on one of the two second largest areas, the rear quarter panel, I carefully wet lay the vinyl, stretch it out to remove most of the creases, then work my way from the top down. Once I have got so far, I can relieve some stress to the vinyl by cutting out the area on the window. Using the same technique as before, I use some heat to deboss around the window line. This simply warms up the vinyl, allow it to stretch and sit into the window. With the vinyl applied, I can cut around the wheel arch, down along the boot line and the rear bumper, around the window, and that one's done. The same procedure for the near side. I'm starting on the front wing. You can see where the stress points are. a good trim, and that's the front quarter done. Using water for every panel now, it's going on much better. Not having much room this side of the tent, you really have to think about how you're going to apply the vinyl, as you have to avoid at all cost allowing the vinyl to stick together, because this can result in tearing and creasing when you try and pull it apart.
Imagine what I could do if I actually had room.
As you could probably tell, this job was testing my patience once more. Trimming along the window line, I try and match it the best I can to the offside. In the ideal world, you want to take the window out so you can fully install the vinyl inside the aperture, but hey, maybe next time. Now I carefully trim around the fuel filler cap. This is really hard to do neatly. I'm moving on to wrapping the A-pillars. Again, in the ideal world, this should have been part of the rear quarter panel, as there's nothing stopping you making it all one piece. However, to cut the template out would have been a nightmare without wasting loads of vinyl, so I've opted to just join it along the top of the door. The template is reversed for the driver's side. Moving on to the rear spoiler.
This is the problem with working cold temperatures. Stuff just rips rather than stretches. Yeah, that's done. That's the waste.
I can't help but laugh watching me acting like a child, but obviously that day the cold and frustration was getting to me. I decided to leave the rear part of the spoiler black, as it fits in well with the grills and the wing mirrors. Moving on to the boot lid. Yeah, you'll see how that goes shortly. This is where it starts to really go downhill. I thought the front bumper was going to be difficult. Once I cut the vinyl down to size, I could cut a big section out the centre to relieve any stress, but it was still really hard to get the creases out. I did persevere for some time. You have to learn when to realise sometimes you may be a bit too far out your depth. This wrap has gone really bad. Regardless of the material, temperatures, conditions, I don't think I can do any better. The material is really brittle. Covering this front bumper in one piece, I just won't even try. I don't think it's possible, certainly in this setup. The centre of the bonnet's a mess. I already have areas lifting all across the top of the screen, areas along the roof even. That's never going to work. I would have to cut this crease, which would be dead obvious. I have pulled some of the paint off the boot lid, so that's definitely been resprayed. Again, all this area is lifting up. Similar story along there. Truthfully, it's probably a combination of things. I have spent long enough getting this far, and it may pay dividends to go down a different route. I'm not sure what that is yet. I believe if I continue, I'm just going to waste more time. I'm thinking I'll probably remove the wrap. Perhaps I'll sleep on it. It's a shame having got this far, but I have made a decision. I've decided it's coming off. So there we have it. After I can't even remember how many days, I have decided to pull the plug. As I said, I think it is for the best. Other than those certain areas, it did look good, but unfortunately it is what it is. We just have to move on. After a short while of head scratching and acceptance of all that wasted time of applying the vinyl, I came up with the idea of still using the vinyl, but applying it in such a way that it won't have creases and excess material in certain areas. Triangles. Lots and lots of triangles. Perhaps you could call it Dorito livery. It's gone very cold again, hence the on-brand colour jacket to match this new livery idea. I have the front bumper on, so now I can blend the front quarter panels into the bumper and the bonnet. I did not anticipate how long this procedure will take. It's easy enough applying them spread out, but when it comes to filling the gaps and making the triangles fit, there is a lot of trimming involved, but triangle by triangle, we'll get there. day or two into my triangle marathon, my fingers were getting a little sore, and I hadn't even covered half of the car yet. A bit more speed up the A-pillar, and eventually we're on the roof. Now we've made it across the roof, back down the A-pillar, and we've made a join. Yes, this is taking as long as it looks. Eventually I will run out of vinyl. I've got the front end done and I've made my way up the A-pillars and have started on the roof. I need to get the door trims back on before I carry on up the doors, and not got a massive amount left. We may change the colour on the back end. I have already changed the logbook and it's logged as orange. Me being me, planning ahead, kind of backfired. Now I have to make the majority of the car orange, but we'll get there. After putting the door protectors back on, I can continue up the doors. I think the triangles are slowly turning me mad.
There's definitely a theme here. Orange, orange, orange.
We're now getting really low on the remainder of the vinyl.
This is what I'm left with now for the orange vinyl.
I would say we've gone about halfway along the car.
I did foresee this was going to happen.
I have found some nice blue in my stock, so guess what? We're going to fade it to blue.
With the plan for the colour change in place, the first thing I did is cut a bunch of triangles out, random sizes and shapes. This allows me, as I put them on one by one, to see where they should go roughly, and generally speeds up the process. As I'm putting them down, it's hard not to try and make them uniform, so I persevered to make them as random as possible.
I have gone at both doors using the same technique.
I would have liked to have made the spread a bit wider, so the two colours faded a bit more, but by the time I had got to this point, I was virtually out of orange vinyl. Once my eyes had adjusted to the colour change, it was the same technique. Pre-cutting a load of different size pieces, then finding the gaps where they fit. Inevitably though, I had to start custom trimming, and this is a real time suck. It's one of those jobs you just have to pick away bit by bit. It's fun for a while, but then you start to go crazy, especially when you stand back and realise how much more you need to do.
The blue is coming along.
Unfortunately, it is as slow as the orange. As I make my way down the rear quarter panel, I start to make most of the triangles a little larger. This is a sneaky way to speed up the job. This is working as I'm already starting on the rear bumper.
Nah, that one's going to come back off. See a wavy line.
As I'm cutting all of the triangles freehand, so with a pair of scissors and not a ruler and knife, occasionally they go a little wobbly. Normally I notice them before I put them on the car. Obviously that one slipped through the net. Before I go any further, I need to get the wing protectors on so I can lay my Doritos over the top. I considered putting the wing protectors on afterwards so they'd just stand out being black, but I thought already I have the wing mirrors, the grills, rear wing and rear lower bumper black. I thought it would start to look a little over the top if the door protectors are black too. A small amount of extreme stick saw and some tape and they'll be as good as new.
Both sides are coming together now. The trickier areas to contend with are going to be around the door handles. I'm yet to put them back on, so until I do, I can just do what I can. This livery I've gone for is certainly a test of endurance. I am starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I have a small amount to do on the rear quarter panel this side, then it's just the boot and rear bumper left to do. The lower part of the rear bumper is textured plastic, so I won't be wrapping that. As the final areas of the car are starting to be covered, this usually happens. I start to enjoy myself a bit more, mainly because the bulk of the time taken to do this is done, and it's nice to see the car almost completely covered. Nothing to see here. A tactical extra large triangle required for the boot lid, made a suitable patch for the dodgy paintwork. With the back of the car basically complete, I can now start to trim all of the edges. When I removed the orange vinyl from the rear quarter panel, oh no, I damaged the area that I repaired. It's pulled a thin layer of paint off and also the filler in this area. Before I can finish off the triangles, I need to repair this area. I start by rubbing the area down. This should provide a good key for when I apply some more body filler to fill the areas that pulled off. While I let the filler dry, I will make a start on trimming the orange at the front. The sharper the knife, the cleaner the cut. I should probably replace the knife, as occasionally it is starting to tear on the edges. I am now making some 5-sided triangles. Well, I guess technically they'd be hexagons. Another few minutes. To celebrate the release of this year's Toyota Rally 2 car, we've come up with this limited edition super soft t-shirt with a direct to garment design. It holds all of the detail without the uncomfortable stiff feel. We have 4 sizes to choose from. This unique design is available now. If you want to snap one up, check the link in the description below. Last night I finished off prepping this rear quarter for some more black paint. I don't need to take too much care as it will all be covered by triangles. I've applied matte black as I don't have any gloss. I'll put some clear coat on top and it should match the car a little better. A good lick of top coat and it doesn't look too bad. How professional does this look? Not a single run in sight. Went a bit keen with the lacquer, but I'll buff that out now. With the freshly painted surface, I am so close to finishing off the Dorito design. That'll do for now. I start to trim around the rear window line. Then making my way down the door line. I should be able to open the door now. With the door open, I can tidy up the vinyl along the underside of the A-pillars, around the top of the rear window. I'm still not convinced by the design. As I trim around the edges, however, it does really start to improve. As night fell, it was rinse and repeat on the near side. Along the rear wheel arch and the fuel filler cap. Down the door line and the lower part of the door. With the door free now to open, I can get into the tricky bits. More overnight parts from eBay. We've got some proper brake pads though, some EBC yellow stuff. Look at them, eh? Will I be drilling this retainer screw out as well? Probably. Yep. That ain't coming out. If you remember in a previous episode, I had to drill out the retaining screw for the brake disc on the near side. With the brake disc removed, I can now fully extract the stud which is left in the hub. There it goes. I could not extract the stud from the hub. I have just drilled it out and put an M6 tap through it. With the hard work done, I can now get the new disc on with a brand new locking screw. If the rotation on this side is anti-clockwise, we need the leading edge of the vane on the outside. As you can see, if I were to fit this one, they'd be going the opposite direction. So this is correct for the near side. Sorted. I've just taken the pads off the near side and I can confirm that we have the right ones, so that's good news. Whoa. Knowing I have the right pads, I can now remove the old ones by removing the retaining clip, releasing the carrier of the caliper, removing both pads. To fully compress the piston, the easiest thing to do is release the bleed nipple, which just allows me to force the piston back. It's good practice to free them up anyway, as it's been sat for so long. After tightening the bleed nipple back up, I can install the pads, then the caliper back onto the disc, making sure the appropriate sensors go into place. On this side, the inner pad has a wear down sensor, and that's it, both sides are done. Next, I'll get the door handles back on. Doesn't feel amazing, but I guess that's how it is. Nothing seems to fit back on very well on this car. On the near side, I had the lock to contend with, so it was a bit more tricky sliding that back in, as I had to put it in simultaneously with the handle, but with a bit of perseverance, it slid into place. I think I need to replace the battery in this key fob. Door handles are on. Now I'm going to check to see what engine codes I have, if any. I'm sure there'll be some. Before I put the front bumper and everything back on, it might be easier to get access to anything. 0 codes found. Interesting. That's good then. It didn't show the code for the mould on the steering wheel for some reason. Strange. I am now removing the front bumper, as it was only loosely installed to fit the livery.
While the front bumper's off, I can take advantage of having access to do the bolts up for the calipers.
Whilst I had good access at the front, I checked around on the bolts to make sure they were tight. Luckily I did, as some were slightly loose.
The underside of the gearbox has some oil residue, so I'm going to check the oil level now and top it up.
I'm using a siphon pump, which is really handy to get gearbox oil into gearboxes, especially in a scenario like this, as you can just pump the amount you want from a bigger container.
I think that's pretty good anyway.
With everything buttoned up underneath, I can get the under tray back on, along with the arch liners.
The arch liner this side never came out, so I had no issue refitting this, which is more than I can say for the near side. I'll probably have to rivet that there. I've just drilled out that hole, which I'll probably rivet again, so let's see if I can get the arch liner in.
The problem with dealing with cars made 18 years ago is corrosion, and these small Torx fitting screws are notorious for snapping and rounding off.
Managed to get a repair washer and a rivet for that one, and a smaller washer for the outside. The arch liner doesn't fit very well. It is in the factory position, so there must be some discrepancy. I can't actually remember what it was like before. Now I can get the front bumper installed.
The front bumper goes back on.
Guess who forgot to plug the fog lights in? That would be moi.
Then the plugs for the fog lights are installed, once I remember to do it. Before I put all the screws back in, I make sure the tabs on either side are slid into place correctly. This massively affects the way the front bumper and the front quarter panels line up.
I'm getting somewhere.
On goes the centre grille, making sure not to snap any of the brittle plastic clips. Now I can refit the number plate holder. On goes the number plate.
Next, I'll refit the tail lights, number plate, and some of the trim to the boot lid. Then we won't be far off from getting the car back onto the ground.
I am starting with the tail lights that go into the boot lid, making sure all the plugs and connectors are clipped in and that the nuts are done up tight. Then it's onto the larger rear tail lights that insert into the rear quarters. These will also have to be sealed with silicone around the top to stop water leaking into the boot. Then the interior trim in the boot gets clipped into place, well, mostly clipped into place. I may have got heavy-handed and lost some of the clips in the process.
I love trim so much.
Next, the car aerial is installed, making sure the locking washer is put on before the nuts. There is minimal space under the head lining, so it took a little time to line it all up. I ended up taping the aerial to the rooftop just so it would hold in place while I could get the nut on. Then I could get the plugs back together and install the boot surround trim. The final bit for the back of the car now, and on goes the rear number plates.
Picking up where I left off, I have been working away for the last week, so I haven't had a chance to do any work on this thing. But I do have some fresh rubber for the front, so once I get the rear arches installed, I can get both sill protectors back on with these fixing strips. We may have to make some more mounts further up in the area where I did the repair on the sill. Firstly, I want to get rid of this pond that's accumulated. We wouldn't want the floor to fall through, would we? For the arch liner, I'll drill some fresh holes for these to clip into, and the same underneath. The drill's just about to give out. Sounds pretty broken to me. It's properly dead. So I'll move on to another job. I will put the front wheels on. In fact, before I do that, I think these need a lick of paint.
Originally, when I first started this project and I had plans to wrap the car orange, we thought it would be a good idea to paint the wheels graphite grey or anthracite. In the end, I found I had lots of etch primer in stock, along with some clear coat. I thought I would experiment and see what the etch primer looks like with clear coat on top. I think it turned out really good. How long it will last, I don't know, but you don't see many wheels in that exact colour. The main reason I wanted to spray the wheels is the glass finished alloy on the main face in lots of areas was pitted badly with surface corrosion, and as a result they looked terrible. You may notice I did not mask the tyres, so I'm banking on the fact eventually the paint will wear off the rubber. While I wait for the paint to dry on the wheels, I start tackling the job of cleaning the inside. This car has been abandoned for several years now, so there is a fair bit of mould on the inside, and it will take a good few attempts to get this thing clean. The worst areas by far were around the steering wheel.
Let's see what treasures we can find in here now.
Like most when cleaning out cars, you're always hoping you're going to find a treasure trove of all those years of lost pound coins, but sadly on this occasion I find nothing worth saving. The same went for the near side. I've discovered the beach. I think I'm going to have to find a better hoover for this desert I've found. I have sprayed all 4 wheels and applied the clear coat, so I've gone for etched primer grey with the orange and the blue, which should look quite good. I have also sprayed the centre caps. With the wheels ready to go back on the car, I sort them out. The 2 worst at the rear. As I said before, I'm putting the new tyres on the front. As it's front wheel drive and the wheels have the job of steering and putting the power down, it's a good idea to use the best rubber for that application. The tyre choice, I've gone for the same Toyo Proxy TR1 tyres as I put on the Peugeot. I just have a pair for now, which I'll put on the front. I'm gonna have to jack it up, aren't I? Carrying on with sorting the interior, I'm cleaning the handbrake cover and centre console. If you've been watching this whole series, you will remember this area was nasty. All kinds of biodiversity, so I'm making sure this gets a good clean. With a brand new replacement drill, voila. I continue drilling the holes for the rear arch liner. The original plan to fit the rear arch liner was to use the original clips on the inside. However, you can see they've gone brittle and most of them have split. Instead, I've reverted to repair washers and rivets, and I've done exactly the same on the near side. Last night, I installed the center console and I have given the once moldy rubber inserts a good clean so these can go back in. Now I need to get the sill protectors back on, which is easier said than done, as I need to slide this piece on and have it flush at once, which is not particularly easy. I do one and then the others aren't in, and it's just a vicious circle. Eventually I get my act together and it slides into place. Okay, I can now fit new screws for these 3. As this area was cut out when I repaired the sills, I need to replace what was there. With the strips situated with the majority of the screws, it was held in the correct place, so all I needed to do was drill some holes and put some self-tapping screws in, making sure not to do them up too tight, so there was a gap on the top to slide the sill protector down and onto. Now the challenging part is to actually get the protector on. With this strip on, I can now get some adhesive on the top part of the protector. It'll probably end up messy, but because there is damage to the strip where it hooks onto this piece, it won't fit very well anyway, so I will just do my best with this stick saw. It does say it sticks anything. With the adhesive applied, I'm careful not to wave it around and rub it on the car, as it's very sticky and messy to get back off, so I'm being careful to apply it evenly and align it accurately first time. Working my way from the front to the back, I have my clamps ready to hold it into place, and I run some tape along the door line to add some extra security while it dries. I've had to get creative with holding this piece in place. Using the broom handle wedged against the bench seems to work. I will now attempt to install the other side without moving the car too much, as all of this looks a bit precarious. Now that I had the technique down, I was confident in where the adhesive had to be. Once there was good coverage, I did my best in the low light to match it exactly to the offside. It took a while to get it aligned, but once I did, I secured it the best I could, and I wiped all the excess adhesive off to save any extra work the next day. I have both sides propped up now. I'll leave it overnight, hopefully it will stay in place the following day, and it looks to me like it's held. Nice. Take the really advanced props down. Might need a good clean up. Last night in the dark, I couldn't really see what I was doing, to be quite honest. It was a bit chaotic doing this side, not really having the room I need, but again, this side looks good. It just may need a bit of securing underneath. Happy with how well they're secured. I can take the tape off the sills and think about how I'm going to secure it underneath. Good, that's another job done. You didn't think I'd finish this build without using cable ties, did you? Like lots of parts on this car, over the years plastic gets brittle, and that included the fixings for the protectors underneath. So going back to my motorsport roots, I pull out the cable ties. There we go, same to the other side now. With everything taken care of underneath the car, I think it's time to get it back on the ground. I better just check the brakes are all tight. I started by putting the wheels back on the near side, and as I lowered the car to the ground, naturally the offside will lift up slightly, which gave me enough clearance to get the wheels on the offside, and we seem to be making progress. We're almost back on the ground. wheels on the floor, I made sure to torque all of the wheel nuts up. The wheels are on, torqued up, all four corners are back on the ground. I now need to bolt the battery down as I took it out to charge. Way back when I picked this car up, I had to remove the battery to charge it as it was completely flat, so this is one of the first jobs I did. Luckily, I remembered where the bits were to secure the battery back into place. Also, before I get in the car, I thought it was good just to check it had some engine oil.
That was smooth.
With the pile of parts getting much smaller, we're down to the finishing touches. After securing the oil identification symbol onto the oil filler cap, I get the center caps back on the wheels, which were also painted in the etch primer. Check how many bits we're left with. That's off the drop link that I replaced.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Now we can finally get the car out into the daylight and see how this weird triangle Dorito livery looks. After pulling the car out, it was clear to see how many triangles we put on the car. If you would like to guess how many there were, feel free, but I'm not going to count them. I've just had a quick sweep up. This is all in aid of later on. I'll be getting the Peugeot back in, and the Golf will live outside for now. As much as I enjoyed this Golf build, I am glad to get the Peugeot back in the tent for some more attention, as it's been a while. We're back, baby! Again, here you can see how much vinyl has been chopped into little triangles. They're still stuck all over the car. I'm still not completely sold on the look, but you can't deny it's a one-off livery, and both colours do really pop in the sunlight. I love the colour that the wheels came out, as it almost matches the rear bumper. With the rear spoiler, door handles and side mirrors in black, it really sets a theme, and for how it started, I think it's a good improvement. This is it, the first look outside. And I think it came out okay. I think I need to get these bumpers more back to black. The same with the sill protectors. I still have a piece missing on the bonnet. I still need to do a deep clean inside. My Hoover's not doing a great job. I might go to a car wash and get the inside valeted. Now with the car back together, it will be good to get it back on the road. So the next job is to get this MOT'd, and along with having this back on the road, and as we have some uprated front brakes, it makes total sense to get this on the track and see how it performs. I've just noticed the roof lining's in need of some maintenance. Not quite sure what's gone on there. It's almost taken 4 months to do this, but as most of you know already, all car projects are ongoing. It's got car perfume. That's fancy.
But if you don't